Hey everyone, in today's session, we are going to explore how to use Figma and why is it even important for developers to understand what a tool like Figma is. Now, Figma isn't the first tool which solves a problem, but it's one of the first tools which is solving a problem like this in a very interesting manner. And what problem is it even solving? So even before development or actually building websites, there is a layer of design which is involved before actually getting anything out there. These are very useful when you want to piece together what you want to build. Now, before you go out and build a website, it is always important that you kind of understand what you're building, and this can come through different levels. It could be simple wireframes where you just have boxes and figure out your layouts, and what goes on it comes in later. It could also be very detailed list of exactly how the components or what individual elements come onto the design. And in addition to this, it's very also important to understand the user experience or a user flow from A to B to C. So all of these needs to be prototyped somewhere. Now, generally, the most simplistic way to do this is, especially making fidelity designs, is to do it on paper, right? We can just do it on paper and kind of draw things out and figure out how the flow is and have these many pages, and eventually like bring this up onto something like a very simple thing like PowerPoint and figure it out. But now to transform that into a web design, and maybe you want to have very accurate designs, or maybe you envision it in a particular manner. You want it in exactly that manner. So in these cases, you generally work with designers to get those final outputs, right? And these designs are made using tools like Figma. There are other tools like Sketch. There are tools like Adobe XD, which is quite new also, but used to have Adobe's Illustrator or Web InDesign and a few other platforms like that, which is to solve this problem in many ways. So XD is something which is new from Adobe. Adobe's been a pioneer on this for a very long time, but Figma has kind of managed this particular market, especially that it allows people to work on the web, right? It was a very clear advantage, and it allowed ease of collaboration and working with files and all that. So Figma is a very common tool that you would generally work with, and the principles of working with Figma is also uh, something that you will, if you kind of go with this elective a lot, you will end up learning a lot, and you can actually even understand what a lot of designers are trying to use, and it'll also basically help you understand why some of the things or some of the tools better. Um, Now, why is it important to understand the tools better? Because when you're using Figma, also there's a good chance that you miss out on some key information which the designers are trying to inform you. And by reading it better and knowing the tool better, you will be able to build better products, right? And eventually, if you actually have inclination towards design, you could end up being a designer plus a developer, which is quite rare to happen. But those are very rare skills and very interesting skills to also have. Someone with a very keen insight of Figma and development. And such developers are key assets to a lot of organizations so that teams work together as well. Right. So Figma, as you can see, is this tool to basically make these wireframe or high fidelity designs, or even like specific designs on how the user should basically interact with your ideas. So a lot of organizations out there uses. I've used it myself on many aspects, and we also use Figma in Masai for most of our projects, or actually all of our projects, so that all the information regarding the project is actually on Figma, and we kind of mock these and kind of like uh, get approvals and figure out that hey, this is what we want to build for our product. right? So there are very interesting things out there, and one very interesting thing also with Figma is that you have a huge community and a lot of free resources available to work with, right? So the first thing you want to do is you can go ahead and sign up. You can just like use Google itself and sign in using into Figma, right? So what we'll be looking at over the next couple of sessions is one, the foundations and fundamentals of working with Figma. Now, we're going to use the Figma design, not the FigJams. So I can just go ahead and create a new design file. Once you register and log in, you'll be able to get into this. And I can just go in and create a new file over here. Right. So before we get into uh, specifics about more details, I'd like to just show you around different things in the tools. So this is your navbar, or basically your header, where you have a lot of tools on this. This is your toolbar kind of a setup. So on the top, you will have access to your files. This is seems like a desktop app itself, because Figma does have a desktop app which I think works on Electron. Um, so it also has other, I think, mobile apps also. But essentially, you should have similar opportunities or similar tools that you can use from here. General things like you want to start a new file, you want to export things, etc., that you can work with are over here, and general settings you can keep. This is the selection one. Here you can move. Scale is to scale up objects or property things around your system. If you want to create frames and slices, frames are essential like places where you can actually create views and stuff. We'll come to that in a bit, but you'll find that over here. These are for basic shapes that you want to use in your platform. So if you have rectangles, lines, any shape that you want to create for your product comes over here. This is a very interesting tool. It's called a pen or a pen tool. This has a lot of interesting features. I'll probably touch about it later in the session, maybe. But allows you to create very interesting shapes and more complex shapes, actually, like splines to be specific. But we'll come to this specific later. If you want to create text or any kind of typography, you can use this here. You can just use a shortcut T also to manage this. A hand tool is basically for you to move around in the platform. Just grab and move around. A comment, or you can use C here, is when you work in a collaborative manner, you want to give comment to someone, you can just press C or click on this, and you can just select a particular area and then give a comment as such. Right. So that's of the tool. This would be your file name. So let's say my for Figma, right? You'll see your user icon here. If you want to share with other users, you can use this, uh, and you can share it with people. Uh, this is a present mode, generally used when you want to like present things and do something called prototyping, which we'll probably do later. This will give you an option of zoom. So in case you get lost in the canvas of this UI here, you can always zoom back into view and zoom to fit and all of that here, right? It gives you all the information of view specific access also. So for example, when you see rulers and grids, if you want to enable and disable them, you can use this. You want more outlines and stuff, you can use them. So all those information is available over here, right? Um, so by default, any page that you work with, the background by default comes with this gray background that you see. And how do we go and actually create new things? So on the left panel, you will see a set of pages and there's layers and assets which are available to you. Now over here, you can see that I am in a page one, right? Now How do I go about starting or working with this design? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to create a frame. When I click on this on the right side, you will see the frame and it will tell you different sizes of what general thing that you're building for. Generally for Figma, if you're going to build, you're going to build it for web or mobile applications out there. So generally you have things like phone, tablet, general sizes out there, which you can use. You also have general like watch, paper, standard information, so that you have a general idea of how to work. Like it's mostly used for these things. If you want to go create your own, also you can go do it. I'm just going to select our desktop and select MacBook Pro 16. The pixels are that it is working for, and it gives me that. Right. So you can see on the top, this is your ruler basically. It says this is 0 pixel and it goes up to 1728. On the left side, you'll see the ruler again. It goes from 0 to 1000 pixels here. So on the left side, you will see this frame over here, which you can see with a square is more like an artboard kind of a setup. What essentially means that this is your actual area of that what you're trying to see and view and build, right? So this is where all the things happen, and you'll be building things in this. Now, what can you build? Now, everything is in built in Figma using basic shapes out there. Now, you have a couple of general shapes out there to build any kind of things. They start from circles to rectangles to squares, um, and lines and shapes and all of that, right? So you can actually get those all here, and polygons also. So let's go build a simple shapes out there and kind of work with our final application here, right? Let's try to build some basic elements in this. So if I were to create some basic shapes, let's go create a rectangle. Now I create a rectangle, let's say something on this. Now it says it is 273 by 173, which essentially means that this is a width of 273 units and 173 pixels in height. So you can see there are some elements here, which is X and Y. X and Y is the X coordinate to the start of this. So if I go and change this to 0, you can see that it moves to the left side of the panel. If you move Y to the 0, it will move to this. So these are positions of the coordinate system basically, which allows you to set the particular rectangle to a particular position. Now from this 0 position or this particular corner here, you can define the width to a particular size, and I can mention that height also. So if I want something like 300 by 200 pixels, I mention that over here. Now, in addition to this, you can also constrain properties. What do you mean by constrain is that maybe once you click on that, right, and oops, I think it's constrained now. Is the constraint enable. Um, so generally, when you do constraint, it's supposed to like lock your width and height in an aspect ratio, but I'm not sure why that's not working. But either way, if you want to lock it and work with it, just press Shift and then increment it. So when you hold Shift down and then you move around, the sizes of the constraint remains the same. Right? The next option is a rotation option. If you want to rotate this by some value, you can put a rotation over here. So this will rotate that particular element by a particular angle, right? The next part is the corner radius, very useful if you just want to apply corner radius to your entire card. So you can see that this now has a 10 pixels of corner radius. If you want a larger one, you can go ahead and add it. If you want more specifics around corner radius and you want different values in different areas, you can do this also. Right. So now you can see that these two corner radius are a little different from the other two corner radius. So you can go ahead and experiment with that. We'll come to constraints later. Now here you'll have fill properties, which are basically what color that you want to fill for. And you'll see different colors out there that you can use and work with, and you can just select those X values or from here and just select, you will get those final outputs there. So it directly allows you to change the colors with this. A fill means it fills the particular shape with a color. And you can end up like hiding it or disabling it. You can apply more fills also. These are generally used for gradients, or you know, apply different colors on top of it. So you have different options. I mean, this is just going to be at a lower percentage, right? This is an opacity level that you can apply. If I put 100% opacity, it becomes completely black. If I put 20%, it kind of like changes that. Now, this is more useful when you want to apply like a gradient on top of this, and you want to get this kind of gradient on the system. It allows you for that. So more useful on those elements. Right. You have other options also the way you want to use this. If you want to use an image also, you can go ahead and apply an image on top. Now, after this, you have an option for stroke. These are basically like um, borders, and you want to have a stroke, or basically on the edges, you want to apply a particular path on this and solve it. You can use a stroke inside. Now, you have different ways to put it. It's either center, inside, or outside. Okay. So this allows you to use stroke as a width, and you can apply to a particular box. You can change the color also over here to different colors as stroke elements. So if you're working with HTML, you would have probably already used border and stuff. It's not exactly the same, but you can see maybe it's more similar to outline as such, but you can see that you're able to get similar outputs. Right. The difference between center and inside and outside is essentially that where does the border or the stroke actually come in? So is it after the box, or is it inside the box, or is it midway between the box and the outside box? You can have effects also onto your system. The most common effect is like a drop shadow. So now the moment I enable drop shadow onto it, you can see that there is a small shadow which is coming onto your system, onto your box, and it gives a nice pop-over effect onto your system, onto your thing. You have different kinds of shadows you can apply. Drop shadow generally is used on when you want to pop the element out. And inner shadows generally when you want to create an effect of like a window and something is inside this. If you want to blur the entire thing, use a layer blur. If you want to use a background blur, you can use that. I'm just going to go ahead, drop shadow over here as an effect, and you can define how you want the drop shadow also to work. For example, this is the X and Y direction. X means where the drop shadow should be, and from the top left, how do you want to offset it? So it's 4 pixels by 4 pixels. So if I put larger and larger, you can see that this is going in that direction. So if I put 30 in the Y direction, you can see that it moves in the Y direction that time. Even over here, you can have different values for blur to make it a little smoother in nature, or you want it very sharp in nature, right? So you change the blur basically to manage that. I'm going to keep it very light right now, and I don't want too much blur also, so I'll probably keep it on 5 or 4 is also fine. If you want to change the opacity around this, you can go ahead and change that as well. So it gives you a nice drop shadow. Now, Figma does come with an export option. This gives you an option to export things into different shapes. So if you wanted to use something as a an image or an SVG and stuff, you can definitely go ahead and export in this manner. And you can also define the size of this on how you want to expand or you want to use it as a 1x or 2x or 3x, etc. Those also can be done through this export option. Right. So we have explored right now things on the right side, the different properties that you can work with when you're working with general shapes. How when you're working with shapes, you have an option of building more complex objects or complex components and shapes out there. Now, you tend to have, so you can see that this particular frame and this rectangle is kind of indented into this. Now, what it essentially says is that the parent is the frame MacBook Pro 16, and this is the rectangle one. Now, I can go ahead and rename this to something more, something that makes more sense. Like I would just say, this is the card, right? Um, and you can like move this around and work with it. You have an option to lock it. If you lock it, you don't have an access to move this around. It becomes disabled for you to move. Right. So you can have, so within a frame you can have multiple levels. So if I go ahead and if I use the option command and then shift, you can see that you can create a duplicate of this. This is, I think, control also on the web. Sorry, on Windows, I think. But otherwise, if you just want to copy paste, you can do Control C, Control V, and then like drag it with a shift. If you use a shift, it will lock it to that particular position, right? Uh, it's either in the X or the Y direction. For me on Mac, I have an option of there's an option button. If I use the option button and drag it, it will basically create a new. Now you'll start to see that when you create a new copy also, it tries to match the spacing between different elements. So let's try to make a little larger component. So we can see that over here, I can go create a circle in this manner, right? And let's say I want to place it over here. Now I want this to be an entire card and it has to work in one particular, like along with this entire box that we have. So even though I placed it here and it looks fine, if I go and try to change the position over here, you can see that the circle or this shape that we created does not move along with it. So how do you maintain or lock these two with each other? So you have an option of grouping them, and so all you have to do is select the elements that you need. Right. So if I can just click it and do shift and click, you will see that these two are selected on the left. You can go and right click it and do a group selection. Once you do a group selection, this will create a group for you which has the ellipse and the card inside it. Now you can go and change the positions inside it and you can play around with that if you want. But essentially now, if you try to move this entire group, it moves the circle along with it. Now, if you want to make any changes to the ellipse or the circle inside it, you just have to double click it and then move it around. So I can go and make some more basic shapes over here, and I can give it the color itself. Now, I want this to contain the size of the circular element. You can see that Figma automatically tries to match me into a particular position here. So this is essentially Figma trying to help you and match like general position, like center alignment, end alignment, top alignment, and all of those. So it tries to give you that information to you so that you know how this is being placed with the entire uh, card itself. Now I can go and place this in somewhere over here, and you can see that it automatically tries to fetch or keep this information aligned. This way, it creates a better alignment for you, and you know that it works well. But you can see that these two rectangles are not on the inside the group. So I'm just going to drag them and place them in the group. Right. Now, even within this, you can see that this necessarily is not aligned correctly over here. So how do you go about do that? I can just create another group here. So I can just go and create one more group out of this. Right now you can see there's two levels of group which is being created. And now I can say, okay, I want this to be center aligned and aligned to the center of the card that or the card element that we have. So this is the content, right? I can say avatar here. I can say name. I can say description. Right. This gives us basic information of how to set this up for a simple card. And you made your first component here. So let's just say this is a user. It's a very simple component that you have made here. You're going to go and make changes. You can just go and click over here to make this necessary requirement to changes. Right. This is not perfect, but I think it gives you a fair idea of how to work with a simple component and kind of work with different grouping and like create these objects and shapes from that. So let's go and also now see how we can add text to this particular design. And let's go create, let's say, rental browser. Right. So this will just show you how to um, how to create a simple text here. Now we can change the particular effect of the text here. You can select fonts over here, right? And you can select what font to be used for this person. I'm just gonna go with the Roboto itself, and I can change the just 24 pixels maybe, or maybe I can just make it 18. Right. So I'm gonna set the text over here, and you can define how it should be. Now you can see that it gives me this option here, but you also see that there is an option on the design here which kind of tells you how to align this. So I can select the element that I need, and let's actually go inside the component and paste it over there, right? And let's select this, and I am going to select this as center. So this is also another way to basically align the text in with respect to another element. So you can just select this and select the how the alignment should be. Right. Now, in addition to this, let's go create one more text here, which says RB, right? And let's keep that over there. And I can also ensure that it is uh, correctly managed here. Great. Now I can go and add one more text over here, which probably gives information of who the user is. So I can probably just say some description or some title. Let's say. Right, and I can just keep this person over here. And if you want to like really define where the person or how it should look like again, you can keep it to this level, and you can add like push it in particular manners. Like you can just add like some uh, your right. So it gives you a clear idea of how to map text also now. Right, this gives you a little more clearer picture. And if you want to change, let's say this to be a little bold in nature, you can just go and change that to bold here, right? You can change this to be maybe, let's say, light, right? And I can use this to be also a little bold in nature. Great. So we have used some basic text also and typography into our system. Let's go see how we can actually like create a simple or use components itself. Now, one great thing about Figma is that you can actually use components and publish these also into a Figma community itself. Um, so one step towards that is actually to create a component. And when you right click on a particular element here, you have an option to create a component. So when you make a component out of this, you can see that there is this in the assets folder or section here, there's a local component called a user card, right? So we have a user card over here, and let's go and delete this. So you can go and create more cards basis from this. So it's like a your own library of components that you want. Similar to how you do this on the web, you can create components which are usable in nature on design also. So when you start to build a design library, generally you have these atomic components like small, let's say typography, and then you have these larger components like cards coming out of it. And these build up the entire website through these small components. So you have atomic components, and then you build larger components from that. Generally the principles called are atomic, then you have molecules, and you build on top of that as well. So most minute component that you have are atomic, and then you move from there. Now, if you want to get other components, I think from the uh, these are generally local ones, but you can also get from components um, from the community also. Let me just see if we can do that. If you want to publish a particular component, you can see that into a team, and then you can create a team and then publish these components also from there. So if you want to go to the community, you can just go to Figma and go to the community from here. So um, there's an option over here to go to the community and search for what you can get from there. So if you want to like search for different components, let's say I want something like a date with or something, right? There are plenty of elements or systems out there that you can just use, which people have published, and sometimes teams and companies also have published. For example, if you're working in material design, they actually have Figma designs also available so that everyone can use it in their when building their wireframes also. So, for example, if I were to use from material design, on this essentially creates this for you, and you can actually duplicate from that, right? And this is how it would look like. So if you want to use this in your page or etc. You can use that over here. Right, so you can duplicate this and kind of work on with that. So we also now looked at creating components out of your system and reusing that in areas. Now, another common thing that you want to work with when you work with projects, or is that you want to have a little more reusable or maybe responsive components also. So let's go and create some Navbar for us, right? And let's create some basic shapes over here also, and let's kind of build that small thing there. So I'm just going to keep it as it's a little smaller size, and I can just use a text here, and let's say RJ or something. And let's put this. I can change this to maybe 34. I'll probably have to uh, realign it again. Do that. So let's say if I were to use this particular artboard, and I made this Navbar in this manner, right? Now, when you change the size of the artboard, right? You can see that this doesn't actually change. There's no move as such. So Figma gives you a very nice or interesting way to work with this is by selecting something called constraint. So what right now it does is that it's constrained only to the left side. So if I change this to left and right, and I'll keep this to the top, and now if I go and change the size, you can see that it changes. Although internally I've not made any change to fix it, right? Um, but you can see that the group itself changes. Uh, this we can probably keep it as a right, and I'll just probably group these two also. I'll just group this right. So now I think if I go ahead and change this, you can see that now it maintains this element for us. So this is how you can also use constraints, which are very powerful, especially when you want to have little um, you want to like maintain this aspect ratios, and you want to create something which is useful in different shapes and sizes, because responsive behavior is something that you actually work with a lot. So for example, if I were to change this, you can see that this actually expands in a particular manner, but you can see sometimes the text or things may not change correctly. So actually, I think I can actually change that by defining the constraints on this. So maybe I can just do that by grouping these two. And let's go and group these. So I think this is a secondary component which comes from the parent component. So you'll have to actually change the master component for that. So you can see that this is the master component. So let's actually modify the master component. So you can see if I make changes to the master component, it actually reflects on the other components also. So you have to make changes to the master component that you can see by this icon over here. So I think you can also see here saying that go to the main component and then change. So over here, I can define, I guess, on how this should be. And I can say this should be center and center. Now, if I go and change the position. It changes a little bit, but I guess not the way we intended it. And let's keep this to the left and up, right. So let's also keep this uh, left and top. I think it should work. But if you want the scale to be maintained, then different ways to manage. Right. So different ways to work with constraints to get the final outputs, but you should be able to like use these to manage it. I know this is scale, so as scale increases, this also grows. Uh, but you can maintain this in particular ways here. If I use, let's say, left to right and top and bottom. Now, if I scale it, you can see that the size actually just maintains there. And if I use this also as say right, and then let's say top and bottom. Right, when I do this, you can see that it manages in this manner. Uh, and let's top and bottom, let's select top, right? So now you can see that the shape is actually being maintained in this manner. And I can go and change this also to right, and maybe right, and this way that it just works in a little more intuitive manner. So if you don't want to touch the main component, now we can just go and change the separate component out there and see how that actually performs. So constraints are a very useful way to work with your project and give you like a really interesting way to work with responsive behavior. I can just change this to let's say top instead of bottom, and I think that should like fix our final outcomes. So this just works very well for our response. Also, you can see that you can use comments here to say say how does so this can go to your rest of the team, and you can actually manage notification comments there. You're gonna see you're gonna see the comments there. Just press C, and you will see the comment on the system. And here you will enable comments by pressing Shift and C. You should be able to see all the comments there. You can also end up creating just comment blocks in your system also, something like this, and actually like define some text on that. So depending on the team that you go for, it may be used in different ways. Great. So now you've seen that we worked with one screen size. You can go ahead and create more frames also there. So if you want to, let's say, use this on your phone also, let's say my iPhone 11, and let's maintain this as another screen share. So maybe you want to use this over here, right? And let's use this also over here. Let's go over here and add. Although I think this should still work for us. Don't know why it didn't. Oh, it's not a component, so So let's go and just create it as a component, and maybe we can reuse it also as a component. And from this, we're just going to use the local component and drag and drop it over here, right? And let's see if I use this here. We'll probably have to change something in the master component to um, work with the layers. Because this is, yeah, this looks like it's on right. So this seems fine now, and you can see that it works well for different screens also. So you can see that you don't have to actually create everything from scratch again, but you're able to use the same navbar and kind of move from the from the desktop to a mobile version, and kind of reuse that same thing just by changing the constraints. So this is how you improve productivity when you work with Figma. But also very important to note, as a developer, you should also be looking at constraints. So this is one of those things which gets missed as a developer, is that since constraints are a specific feature, a lot of developers tend to miss this and tend to miss how particular components or responsive behavior is supposed to be. So if you just look at how the left and the top, or how the elements inside are supposed to move with scale, you have a better idea of how to build responsive components. So this is very important as a developer, that you should be reading this and looking at constraints to um, basically bring out the final outcomes for us. So this will improve your understanding of what the designer is expecting you to build, right? Because these things can be easily missed, and what happens in a design to development stage, that these things get missed, and then there's a lot of rework going on to building components, right? Because it wasn't really communicated. So the designer assumes that the developer knows this, but the developer may not know exactly some details of how to work with constraints over here. So I think this is a good introduction to what all you can do with Figma. So just to reiterate what we have worked with, we have basically understood the basic layouts and all the functionalities in this. We looked at creating boxes. We looked at creating shapes. We looked at creating using text, typography, and some basic elements to it. We looked at creating a component out of something. We use the components in multiple areas, and interestingly, we try to use this as a along with constraints, and this allowed us to actually reuse the components in different screens also, and kind of define behaviors of how these components respond in different screens. This also is a very important thing for developers to read, so that they build the right products for finally for them, and there's lesser communication gaps between a designer and developer. We also looked at other tools of creating and publishing these assets. You can also have gone through community designs out there and use it in your projects also. Now, in addition to this, we looked at working with artboards and a lot of stuff on the right side panel here on how each and every element is working. We looked at fill, stroke, effects, export. We looked at positioning of how these elements also work. And this way, this should give you a basic introduction of how to work with Figma. And hopefully some of you will be able to like build some basic components out there and do some basic prototyping.